Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, go quickly run through this. Councilmember Waring, I don't see him on yet. Councilmember Seekings. Don't see him. Mr. Batista.
Present.
Doug Warner. Bob.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Green. Susan Lyons. Here. Cash and Drolet.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Kevin Mills.
Good morning.
Good morning. Laura Cantrell.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Jordy.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Dennis Frazier.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Maybank.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Mr. Chairman, Haygood Morrison.
Morning.
Good morning. And I see Councilmember Seekings has joined us. Okay, Mr. Chairman, it's all yours.
Great. Well, thank you all for the time and for joining today, of course. We have a handful of items to go through. Number one is the presentation to the council. I think 2 meetings ago, we discussed packaging up everything together. I think using this meeting, you can kind of start to answer or finalize the question of really where does this go? We have the plan recommendation in place, and then I put the question in the agenda, which is, does the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers findings in the feasibility study serve as a potential solution for storm surge protection on the peninsula? So something we'll be discussing later. Before getting there, we have call from Susan to increase the number of meetings from once every 2 weeks to once every week. We also have from Susan the copies of the content to go into the communications working group information sheet, which I think Susan put it very well. John Q. Public and informing them on current content and so anyway, that's tremendously helpful. And as I mentioned, the last one is just to discuss what we think is the efficacy of this, the Army Corps findings, resulting Army Corps findings on storm surge protection for the peninsula. And so, does anybody have any thoughts, comments, and questions there as far as the agenda for today?
I have a question. Are we starting with an update from Dale, or Dale, were you giving an update when some of us were getting on?
Sorry, yes. No, they'll be giving an update. I skipped right past that and skipped to the end. So thank you, Laura. That's exactly right. Appreciate that.
I'm ready to give my, but also can do that after any decisions are made. So I'll defer to your guidance here.
Oh, go for it, Dale.
Okay.
Kind of questions heard, please. Please.
Good. Just a number of things to run through based, over the last week or so. Thank you all for tolerating and helping me come up to speed on all this. I do appreciate. I have calls and texts with a lot of people and meetings, and I'm learning a lot. I think I know a lot, but there's context above, that's visible and invisible, and I need to understand all that relates to Charleston. So any guidance you have is much appreciated. So thank you. One thing, Mr. Maybank sent some questions a month ago to have answered. As we mentioned in the last meeting, we spoke with the Corps. There's some questions that I could have answered already, but we spoke with the Corps about some other questions. They're very good questions. Mr. Maybank, I sent an email to you last week saying, let's jump on the phone and I'll run through them with you as you like, or we could do it in one of these meetings. What I know, that could be pretty quickly, but just want to say that we do have some answers. Some of the answers are going to say we won't know until PED, but That offer is still there. In the last meeting, Susan asked a question about the interior hydrology analysis the Corps did to figure out how much water they're going to have to pump out, right? And that was just, as you heard yesterday, there was HECRAS 2D. That's a model. It just shows water surface elevation on the streets. However, they are assuming that Market Street will be finished, that Spring Fishburne will be finished, and that there's one other one that they will be finished. But in their analysis to date, they have not made any assumption about Calhoun West or King Hugie. So King Hugie will be finished by the time anything gets done up there. So that would likely improve what they're showing right now. And Calhoun West is not in any of their calculations. So Bob, I hope that answers your question on that. Bob, I think you asked another question in the last meeting regarding why the heck didn't the Corps run the deflection model or the impact on water, the impact of the surge structure on water surface elevation in surrounding communities. Why didn't they do that in their first analysis? Very good question. I misspoke. I just assumed that they would do that at another point because of a lawsuit that the Army Corps had in New Orleans. I thought they were all doing it. They did it because the citizens, all the comments came in and questions came in with the Corps. Well, what would that be? So they did it because of public push, not because they were doing due diligence. And oddly enough, and I got this from Wes yesterday, there is not a water surface elevation impact analysis that's being done or has been done for Miami or for Collier County or for Norfolk. And those other ones make sense to me, but Norfolk, I mean, the Elizabeth River is a bunch of tidal creeks. It's not a river. It's a bunch of tidal creeks that go up and down. And it's narrow in places, and you would think there would be some water surface elevation impacts there, and that the folks in Norfolk would have asked for it, but they didn't. So the Corps does not do this as a matter of course later on. So the push here from the community was very important. So that's an update, and I hope that helps. Again, and I think it's important to understand that I mentioned it last week, but the Corps uses fairly standard off-the-shelf models that have been vetted for years and years and years, right? So these are things that they're using for that. So it's not like they have their own special black box that we can't trust. If the AdCirc model, which is part of this, again, the Water Institute uses it all the time to look at waves and surge and energy and things like that. So the Corps model is fairly open, and we should trust it. An update after last, started last week, the need to have a financing strategy developed and then communicated is essential. I had a conversation with the CFO last Friday. We had another conversation with the mayor a couple days ago. The intent is to get, it's not my job, it's not my responsibility to tweak numbers and say this is the pot of money that we're going to use for that. That's not my role. I have opinions about that, and I will share them. But Amy, CFO, she's going to come up with sort of a spreadsheet of what sources of local money are available right now, what they yield on an annual basis, which of them could be used for this process, for this project if needed, and then what is the deficit given what we assume we're going to need, whether that's a 20 million a year over 10 years or over 12 years or whatever that number is. But we are going to start to develop a strategy, and then I will share that with you all whenever that is ready. I think that will be in 2 weeks. It may take me a couple of days to digest what she has said, and I will share that with you as soon as we have it. But that is underway. And I requested a meeting with Councilman Waring to just pick his brain a little bit, for want of a better word, or to understand. He makes a very compelling argument about how important the half-cent sales tax was for other regional initiatives. And I want to understand more about that. So I've requested that meeting. And if anyone else has that information, please give me a buzz and I will listen intently. Because I think that could be an important part of this. And there are hurdles you have to go through to clear that. But that may be something to wise, those kind of efforts do pay for infrastructure, around the US. So let's see. And I know there's a discussion about a peninsula-wide mid that Amy is trying to ponder up or ponder what that will mean. So we're working on it. I just want to let you know. And Cashin, we spoke earlier. I think it's important that whenever we get to a point of sufficient information, that we engage with your working group on that issue. So there you go. Another key thing, I have like Mark, we were talking with the Norfolk District and with the Miami-Dade folks and Collier County now and then, and the Keys, the CSRM folks, what they were doing and what they were running into. I have not yet had a call with Jim Murley, who's the CRO in Miami-Dade, but I know him for quite a while. We're going to try to find time to talk either this week or next. I want to get the lowdown on why they did what they did. What I do know, and I tried to share this last week, is that the line that the Army Corps has presented to them as being the one that they would build, splits neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods and rich neighborhoods. And so there's a question of equity there within the neighborhoods. And then there's a question of equity, between the neighborhoods. And then you have an issue of splitting the business district, right? And that is, of course, a financial impact and insurability. So the line that the Corps of Engineers drew was rational for their guidelines. It was not rational from a sense of the community, as I understand it. So they have asked for an LPP. There's a big push, a very active community in Miami-Dade, that they want more nature-based features included in this. So that's another reason for them to pursue. They want to see what's possible. They know also that the CSRM for the Keys is all nature-based features and non-structural, right? It's sand additions and home elevations. So they see like, well, if they're getting more nature-based things, can we get them too? And as you know, sediment addition to the beaches down there is something the Corps of Engineers already does. And so people were thinking, well, if we can get more sand in front of Miami Beach, the city of Miami behind Back Bay is protected. So there's a sentiment there that they could do more with that. So I will talk with them and get more lowdown if I can and share that with you as appropriate as soon as I can. And then one final thing here, the Sherwood report, I know other folks have asked for more information, and the folks from Sherwood, Tom, who I know very well, I spoke with him at length last week, just to discuss how he is and all that, and some of the questions we've had. It's important to say that the Sherwood report, their approach was indicative and inspirational and aspirational. I said that last week, but I want to remind people. The issue in Rosemont, it is uncertain if that soil would support a levee, right? That's what they're proposing a burn. So they did no geotech. It would likely require either an impingement upon the marsh, which is going to create some issues with the environmental community and the resource agencies of the state. And if you don't push it into the marsh, you're going to push it back into the property and you have to take some land. And if you assume an elevation let's say of 4 to 6 feet up there that you need at the edge, at the marsh. You need 10 feet on top and 4 feet of width for every 1 foot up. So you're talking 20 to 24 feet on either side. So you're talking a structure, a width of a structure of probably 60 or 70 feet. You would be taking homes to do that. And then you need pump stations because there's no subsurface drainage. So, and Tom realizes that, but they were saying, there are problems up there, Tom from Sherwood, there are problems up there right now are primarily stormwater. They don't get tidal impacts. They may in the future. My biggest concern is they will not bear the brunt of a frontal surge like the battery would. My concern is that the water would push up the rivers, and when the storm turns around, the water would come back down, and they're then very vulnerable to backflooding. So we need to keep that in mind. And just so you know, I drove that neighborhood last Saturday for about an hour, just trying to make sure I understood everything was going up there. The issue of the breakwater, and we talked about that. The Corps removed it. They said it didn't provide any surge elevation or surge risk reduction benefits. Again, that's something that the city can try to pursue as a betterment. Provide no surge risk reduction, as I explained yesterday, but they pursue as a betterment for a variety of other goals or benefits if that's necessary. But Tom did understand from Sherwood, agreed that wasn't going to provide surge benefits, but it could provide a bunch of other things. And then for Lockwood, that was aspirational. And again, the issue there is, would you impinge upon that marsh with a levee, with a softer structure? And if not, how much width would you need? That is one of the highest. That area is going to need the highest elevation, from the base, from the ground level now to the NAVD 88. So you would have then a rather robust high structure. And how much land would you need to take to build that? And then that's all fill. So a strong geotech analysis is going to be needed to see if the subsurface would support that weight. So keep that in mind. And Tom was very conscientious that proposing to change the Lockwood nature was not something they studied vis-a-vis traffic, but they realized that was a shortcoming. And they didn't have an opinion on that, but they realized that a traffic study would have to be done. So that's important context for as we try to understand what is the Sherwood report teeing up. Very aspirational. These are things that can be thought more deeply about over time, but they do have shortcomings vis-a-vis the plan that we're considering now, because they would, if we would pursue an LPP, and I think that train has left the station, but if you would say a year ago, whenever we want to do that, those are things that you would pursue. But again, there are some, I would worry about whether or not that area could support the weight of a softer structure. So anyway, just want to present that, and happy to ask questions, and happy to spar with people, take criticism, because again, this is something that requires further study. And if this were a greenfield development or a more suburban development where space wasn't at such a premium, I would like, hey, let's study more. So sharing my bias there. Okay. And that's it. Okay, good, it's yours.
Thank you. Real quick, Susan, I'll go on. I just want to make a point. Our role is really in advisory capacity. I think, Bob's hammered on that a number of times. Something maybe we can do as one of our recommendations and consensus recommendations, we can discuss this further in the next meeting, is specifically, request further investigation into Rosemont specifically. Kaylin, just something to we can, discuss again in a more formal way at the next meeting. And that way it's incorporated officially into our overall recommendations.
So yeah, again, so there's the most important, in my opinion, recommendations from Sherwood is do a resilience or community study up there. That, we haven't talked about that. That is a recommendation that would be wise for the committee to ponder, in my opinion. It's a very vulnerable community. It has a very distinct identity. It has, that is something. It is being treated in some ways in a bit differently than the rest of the peninsula for a variety of reasons, as Wes said. You would, if you try to build a wall there, you would harm the community in some ways. So, but that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that elevation only or non-structural only is what it needs. There could be other needs, in my opinion.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we
Mr.
set
Chair,
up-
I would
Yeah,
add to Dale's update really quick, just from the city. And I know Herbert, we talked about this, but the Army Corps of Engineer are coming out to Rosemont again for a community meeting on September 28th next week at 5 p.m. So if anyone on the committee is interested, I will give a disclaimer. The city, we're still in phase 3. So we are having some limited capacity inside, but we hope to maybe have a hybrid of some folks outside and being able to switch off of inside. But that will be going on next week, September 28th at 5 p.m. And Herbert, I will get you that agenda hopefully this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I have some information from the Corps that I will send you to share, but just wanted to make sure everyone on the committee knew about that meeting coming up.
Thank you, Kaylin. And I'll just make a final point on Dale's. Well, you, me, Dale, and the EIS working group get together to make a more formal agenda item for our upcoming meeting. We'll make a point to do that. Bob, I see you. I'm going to call on Susan and then get over to you. Thanks, sir. Susan, go.
I just had a quick question for Dale, and I guess it's buried in the plan, but I haven't gone over it twice yet. About Lockwood and the surface on which the wall is projected. Are they going to drive? Is the plan to drive pilings there because of it is? Because I was wondering about subsidence here.
Everywhere that you would have a concrete T-wall, you would have a plow-driven that would be driven into the marl. You need that. You need that just for stability and to stop it from sinking. So you can support levees that way too, but it is way, way, way expensive. You can create, and I don't know how you do this, but you can create subsurface structure support for a levee in soft soils if you have something underneath it that's solid, like the marl, but it is really expensive. So the concrete thing is less expensive. Everything will be pile supported, which then that enables this 3 feet of elevation adaptation if necessary in the operational life of the structure.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we have about 5 minutes for additional questions. We do have a number of other follow-up items. I just want to make sure that those agenda items, task items don't get lost in what's really good conversation, but also things we need to accomplish. Herbert, I saw your hand up, but Bob, go for it. I think you were next.
Thanks. Hey, good. Geez, I'm wondering whether at this point in our process, whether it makes sense to sort of take a straw vote of the members on where people stand. I mean, it's been 5 months. We're approaching some milestones in terms of informing outsiders, the city council and the general public through Susan's group communications. Where does the group stand? Does the group have the sentiment that, maybe pending and subject to additional questions being answered or additional information, are we of the mind to support this proposal? That's sort of global, maybe more narrow. Does the group feel that we're in a position to recommend that the city at least go to PED phase. That may feel like putting the cart in front of the horse from a process standpoint, but if someone held a gun to my head right now and asked, what is the sentiment, collective sentiment of this group? Boom, I'd be a goner. And maybe others don't feel that way, but I think a straw vote in terms of where people are right now and what are the barriers that we perceive would be very useful, either at this meeting or a subsequent meeting. But I think we need to start to converge on some things, be they resolutions or sentiments of the committee or something. So thanks for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Bob. And I couldn't agree more. And, you know, if there's a level of comfort and ability to do that, and I think, you know, on yes, no, uncertain, or, you know, 3 potential answers, we can readdress that. I guess no, maybe uncertain, but, you know, that was, you know, a great way to handle this, this subtopic D under item 3, the items for discussion. Not to spring that on everybody, but Bob, I completely agree with you. I think it's something we need to do. And we got let's table. So let's just in the interest of time, let's table that until we get to D. Herbert, I know your hand was up, and this will be the last question before we go to the other agenda item.
Good morning, everyone. I concur with you, Bob. I think we had discussed this several meetings back as to the dynamics of the group being able to come together and ask questions openly instead of separately and privately. That, for me, coming from Rosemount, there have been questions that have been asked and not fully explained, and the community asked me questions, and I'm at a loss for explanation, except from what I was given. The benefit of having the group is to be able to discuss and open things up for wherever the questions come from, because a lot of what has to be done, looked at, affects not just one community, but maybe several communities. And again, that's the benefit of us putting our minds together and brainstorming what could be done, or as Bob said it, is that feasible, or where do we stand on any particular question or item? The questions that I asked for Rosemount, I'm still at a loss, and I can't give them any answers as to what they asked as far as information. So again, the idea of going to council with an idea that we haven't really put input into what we project as saying yay or nay, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, understood, Herbert, understood. And I know you, just to put a fine point on that, I know you asked several questions. And I think I have September 1st is the date that I got them. I know a lot of them got addressed. I know there's a follow-up meeting on site with the Corps. And you were good. You sent them out to the group. I'd suggest you do that again with the stuff that's outstanding and unanswered. And we can help, you know, I say we, you know, that can also be posted to the Corps while they're in at the September 28th meeting, 6 days.
Mr. Chair, just a quick point of process, following up on email that went out on Friday. That was follow-up from comments of last week's meeting, an all-out kind of intake of questions from the group that Dale and I can take to the Corps to then get one document that can be shared with the whole committee. I haven't received any questions. We put a deadline for tomorrow. Herbert, we have your questions in there. I know Dale has reached out and offered to speak with you individually. Again, if you would like, we can put your questions in the whole document. I think we can talk to the chair about specifically at the next meeting, putting an agenda item to Rosemont. I think there's ways we can get around that, but I just wanted to send a reminder to folks, if you had any other outstanding questions for the Corps, to get those to Dale and I and to the chair by tomorrow, so we can get those formulated. And my thought and goal was to have some sort of FAQ document that can be shared with the whole committee, and the committee can then share that with, folks that they work with as well. So we can continue to tailor that process.
Herbert, any additional thoughts there, or questions or anything along those lines for anybody involved?
Yeah, so I just say, look, we have two questions here. One is, please, send us your questions, because we're going to send them to the Corps. You gave me questions last week. I got answers for them. We talked with the Corps about Herbert, Mr. Maybank's questions, and we have some answers, but we'll put them in. We'll get them in writing. And if you have questions, we'll get answers in writing, and then that will solve some of this information challenge or information deficit that people feel. One. Two is, what's the previous question? Does the committee have, coming back to that, does the committee have a sense on where it stands? So want to make sure that we're pulling those two apart. So
Question. Then would answers to, per se, Rosemount, you and I discussing them, Dale, or the advisor there, how is the benefit of the group beneficial to Rosemount presenting a case for or against? And I'm making reference to what Bob alluded to, is the idea that we can collectively come together and see the feasibility of what is being asked as working or not working. Did that make sense?
I'm happy to discuss the answers to the questions that I recall that the Corps gave us. So that you sent over 8 or 9 questions. We discussed them with the Corps one by one. I did, and Kaylin did. I want to say 10 days ago. And there were your questions. So my offer to you was, I will speak with you one-on-one, and I'm happy to answer them or to go through them with the entire committee at the appropriate time. We can do that at the beginning of the next meeting, or we can put them in writing. We'll submit them to the Corps as part of this separate process that we asked for last week, and get them in writing. And that way, that can be part of the final answer that the Corps provides to us regarding your questions. Let's say in seven business days or calendar days after, from tomorrow or from Friday. Okay, that's what it's up to you how you want to do that. I'm trying to be respectful of your asking those questions.
I'm looking at timelines, and I just wanted to have Rosemount to have an opportunity to have a discussion before anything is finalized. And if not, that leaves whatever question that Rosemount has, or possibility for something that would work in favor of what they're asking for.
Right.
Instead of kicking it down the road, that I'm looking at proceeding with it in the amount of time we have.
Yes, sir.
Timelines or date lines are met. And that's not being done.
Would this be a possible solution? We will submit them. I will once again give those questions to the Corps in writing. I will ask them to specifically address them next Tuesday in the community meeting. And Kaylin and I will take notes on what those answers are, and we'll post them, share them as a document with this committee. Is that a way to get the answers to the Rosemont community in 5 days? And that way the Corps will be answering the specific questions you asked. Is that appropriate?
That is good as far as a start, and yes.
Okay.
To answer your question, yeah.
Yeah, Bill, you're free to ask more questions. I mean, we know there's more questions than just the 8 you posed, but we'll make sure that those questions that have already been posited are answered by the Corps of Engineers next Tuesday. Okay, and then we will note the answers. We will share them in a document with the committee. Just as a matter of an email exchange, and then they'll be there. And then more questions and more communication will occur during and after that meeting with the Corps next Tuesday in Rosemont. Is that okay?
We are gonna, yes. Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
Great, thank you all. Happily.
A final note. I just want to emphasize. For me, and I think listening to us talk, it is so beneficial that questions and answers are done in a group setting, so we can get the maximum effect of the group in response to those things.
Well, thank you, Herbert. That's noted, and I appreciate it. I mean, I think couldn't agree more. I'd say part of that, the on-site meeting we had at Rosemont was a great example of the power of that with the Corps. So, thank you. No, agreed. With regard, Dale, do you have any other comments as far as that topic 2 on the agenda?
No, I went through the updates, and again, happy to share what I know when the questions were. If I don't know, I'll try to get the answer.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to item 3, items for just discussion. Now, with regards to the presentation to council, that date was postponed to October 12th to give us more time for discussion. I think, Herbert's point on Rosemont being a great example. I think there's some more diligence that we all need to do to get there as far as the actual presentation to the city council. Any thoughts, comments, questions there? Go for it, Dan. I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming then on the 12th, I know we talked about the motion that we collectively passed to recommend for the comprehensive water study. I'm assuming that is first and foremost on what will be presented on the 12th.
It is. Yes, it is. That's correct.
Perfect. Excellent.
Good. Dan.
Not seeing any other hands up. I'm going to go ahead. It's a good segue and relevant to subtopic A. So with regards to meeting frequency, Susan had put forward the concept of meeting once a week through the end of the year. The goal of this subtopic is to put that to a vote to keep the current once every 2 week schedule or move to a once a week schedule. But before we do that vote, wanted to open that topic up for discussion amongst the committee.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to weigh in on this if you don't mind. And it's basically to ask for mercy on at least some of our souls. We're coming into the fall, we're coming into a budget season. This issue that we're talking about is going to come to city council sooner rather than later. An hour and a half once a week doesn't seem like a lot until you take a look at my Outlook and you look at my calendar and schedule. And it is literally almost impossible. And I don't want to speak for Councilmember Waring, but the current workload on unpaid, unstaffed city council members in the city of Charleston is intense, to say the least. And I would just say, if we can keep it at 2 weeks, if there's other times we need to meet, that would be great. But every week, I think, is really going to take us out of this game a good bit, especially with what's coming up in the fall. So, Susan, sorry to rain on your parade. While I think this is a very important topic, there are many others too. And for us, it's just, I just tell you now, it's brutal. is brutal, and adding more onto it, I just think might bring us to the breaking point. So with that, I'm asking for mercy to keep it where we are, Mr. Chairman, and of course, whatever majority says, we'll comply with, but you may need to see us a little bit less.
Thank you. Councilmember Waring.
Yeah, I certainly have to second what Councilman Seekins just said. I asked our clerk of council to give us the number of meetings that council members had in the last year. We had 57 city council meetings. Now, by comparison, under Mayor Rowley, we used to have 22 meetings a year. We had 57. That's not counting committees like this. Okay. I'm just talking city council meetings. We had 57. So anyway, but I will say this though, I don't think that should prevent maybe the committees from meeting, because I think the committee's doing great work. I wouldn't want to stop that momentum, council member Seeking. So if you all could have the deference that maybe council member Seeking is, I can't make every one of those weekly meetings. I love what I'm hearing taking place. Mr. Maybank, obviously, Ms. Lyons, everybody. It really seems like Mr. Batista, the synergies are coming together. So maybe I can tag one meeting, and then maybe Councilmember Seekins can tag the other. But you're right. As far as us doing it every week, it's going to be pretty tough.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Waring. Cashin, I see your hand up.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. With us now having the September 10th report, the funding group will need to start meeting again. And since we meet in the off weeks that the group meets, that really kind of effectively becomes a weekly meeting. I mean, I'm not opposed to pulling this group together to meet more often. I love talking about this project as much as everybody here, but you know, we do with having the working groups, I think it really is effectively we're meeting every week, but I'm of course open to meeting more, and but I obviously understand the severe burdened outlook schedules of both the council members that serve. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. It's a great point, Cashin, on the working groups. I certainly encourage anybody who's not currently involved in one to join in there. I saw your hand up and I saw it go down. Laura, you want to go for it? Is that still? And Laura, I see. I'll get to you right after Kevin.
Yeah, hey, good. I mean, Cashin just shared one of the thoughts that I had, and I support the council members' desires not to overtax the group collectively. Since we do have a pending decision date or recommendation to the council on October 12th, that leaves us with 2 consecutive Wednesdays to possibly convene. There may be benefit for using both of those weeks, depending on how we feel at the conclusion of this meeting, and maybe we just table that decision till then.
Laura, go.
Kevin, I think that's a really great point. And what I was going to contribute, I think every single person on this call has overburdened calendars, and a lot is juggling, a lot of competing demands, and we're all committed to this very important topic and project and want to do our, carry out our responsibilities. So I think we need to meet as frequently as the needs dictate. So Kevin, your point about the next 2 weeks in advance of October 12th speaks to that point. But I would be more in favor of an approach like Councilman Seekings recommended, where we keep the every 2 weeks standard schedule, but we convene extra meetings as needs dictate. Instead of, because Cashin also, that point about the working groups, we need time and space, and more meetings is not necessarily good. I mean, what makes a meeting effective is some preparation and planning. And if we don't have time to do that, then we're wasting everyone's time.
Thank you, Laura. And I kind of probe on that question. It's always appreciate your thoughts on that topic. And what kind of structure would you think for those ad hoc meetings, or as needed, as you put it?
Well, I think it could be an agenda item that we discuss at the conclusion of an existing meeting. We can talk about, are we okay with our next scheduled meeting 2 weeks from now, or do we need something in the interim? And Kaylin, one thing that we could consider is asking people to put a soft hold on the 9:30 Wednesday slots so that we have it if we need it, and then you don't have to go out and do a doodle poll every time we decide we need an extra meeting.
Yeah, that's possible. I just, we are at the discretion of the clerk's office and their deadlines for agendas and public meeting announcements, which essentially, if we are to meet next week, I need to get that out to them by tomorrow afternoon. So soft holds, everybody can keep that in their mind, but I think it will be helpful, at least from a process wise, if by the end of this meeting, if there's an agreement that we hold one next week at the same time, just so we can check all the correct boxes that are required of us as the transparency from the city and the clerk's office.
Kaylin, point of clarification there. How many people what's the number of people for the working groups?
For the working groups, it just can't go over a quorum, which for this committee with 14 members, it would be 8 people. So they're kept at 7 or less per working group, and it is not a public meeting.
Okay, thank you. So it's all, Laura, maybe there's another, point to your point, which is that, it's topic dependent. And, maybe we can lean into those working groups a little bit more if the topic justifies it. Cool. Okay, I see. Great, thank you. Susan, go for it.
Hi, so good discussion on my recommendation or my thought to meet more frequently. And I think as needed is a great idea. And we would know that at the end of every meeting. So if there's consensus on that, I think that would be great. I do feel sort of pressure before October 12th, so I'll leave that where it is. And I have lots of mercy to give our council people. I think you work too hard.
Well, thank you for having mercy on our soul. We appreciate that. We probably need a little of that.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, Susan, I think we'd all second that point after reviewing some of the city council meetings. We're definitely very appreciative of the time that Councilmember Seekings, Councilmember Waring, all put into this. So thank you for that. Well, great. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put that forward to a vote for the committee. So, Susan, would you like to make the motion to meet once a week throughout the year? Or would you like to change that motion before putting it forward?
Wait, say that again,
So to take a vote on this, we need to put forward a motion that we meet once a year.
Once a year?
Once a week, apologies, for the remainder of the year. And we've had some good discussion around that point. Would you like to modify that at all? Or
yeah, I'd like to suggest that we continue the meeting schedule as planned, except when it is agreed by all at the end of one meeting that we need additional meetings in between, meetings.
Understood. So I guess the best way to, and correct me here, weigh in, but best way would be to put forward a motion that at the end of every meeting, we take a vote whether to have an additional meeting the following week.
Right.
Oh, and Councilmember Seekings, I see your note as well on 1040 rather. We will be getting into this. I think the big thing is this information sheet. Obviously, the last subtopic is very, very important as well. But as far as to-do tasks, that's a big one. So appreciate your time. Kaylin, would you modify that note at all?
Yep. Yep, so are we just gonna table that till the end of the meeting and then we'll take a consensus vote at the end of this meeting if we want to have an additional one next week? That sounds right.
That sounds right. And we may not need a motion for that. I don't know if we can just write
That's
it.
fine. I think if we can take a, aye up or down vote, and if there seems to be, if I can't make it clear who's voting, we can do a roll call vote, but I think we can then move on to the next agenda item and we'll table that for the end of the meeting.
Great. Is I guess maybe a good way to put it, is anybody uncomfortable with adding that to the agenda at the end of the meetings? All right, great. Thank you all. Good deal. So moving on to subtopic C, communications working group, FAQ information sheet. Thank you so much to the communications working group for putting this together. Huge effort, great copy. Thank you to Dale and Kaylin for providing inputs and thoughts there. Thank you for everybody that's provided commentary on it. We got it, later on yesterday. So I don't expect everybody's had a chance to go through word for word, but I will clarify that we will have another chance to go through this document as it's incorporated into its final form with pictures, visuals in that 4-page PDF form that we've discussed in the past. And so with that said, folks that have gone through it, had a chance to read it, I'll open up to the floor for comments, thoughts, questions there. And Dale, I see your hand up. Please go for it.
So we had some informal discussion as the meeting started, the need for the public to have the benefit of this information that the working group and Susan have put together. I would suggest let's try to wrap this. My belief is this should be wrapped as soon as possible so it can be shared. Because I do think there will be a number of meetings. You saw the schedule. We have a number of meetings. Caitlin and I and others have a number of meetings with the core, with various stakeholder groups. I think we may get more requests to do that, and I will bend over backwards to do whatever I can to do those. And having the information sheet would be good, and it wouldn't be coming from me, but we would be happy to share it on behalf of the committee with those people we're meeting. So the quicker we can wrap it, in my opinion, the better.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bob, I saw your hand up after that, and Dennis right after that. Thank you all.
Yeah, echo the congratulations on the document. It's a really fine piece of work. Continuing the theme of what incremental value this committee can provide, I'd suggest that we leaven the statement of facts with some opinions from this group. There's a lot of information out there to the public regarding the initial proposal and then the updated draft proposal. And I think this is a good forum for us to start guiding people to what this committee thinks relative 3x3 friend or foe. So that's a theme. The second theme might be leavening this document with what we perceive the barriers to be. If we in fact think that this is a worthwhile project for the city to further invest in, I think this might be a good platform to start identifying, how successful has 3x3 programs been in the past? Is the Army Corps of Engineers adequately funded? Some of the things that we perceive as, do we have the votes at city council? I would, going back to the discussion with Dale earlier on, opportunity missed that we didn't do that analysis on the impact to neighboring communities. That's a big political issue that may be sort of calcified in people's thinking. So emphasizing the result that it's only 1 inch, things like that. So there are a number of, I think, opportunities, to Dale's point, not to delay this, but to start guiding this, not in terms of, rehashing what is already out in the public domain, but I'm trying to synthesize all this information for JQ Public, for what it's worth.
Dennis, and then Susan, I'll call on you right after that.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Susan, for leading this effort on this. Two fine small points, and then one about infrastructure. I think in other meetings I've heard that this project was going to be more than 10 years, and I just wonder if we're setting up an expectation for a project that's much shorter than it really will be. I think I've heard 20 and 30 years in some of those other meetings. Second point is funding. While I know obviously the federal government and Corps of Engineers is putting in a lot of money for the wall itself, but does that mean the city cannot go after other federal funding? Federal is not listed as one of the sources of future funding. I don't know. Just a question. Third, and the what else, you talk about infrastructure, and of course we're always thinking about flooding, and so all of our focus is on seawall and flooding. But last meeting I brought up the point of access to the peninsula, and it may have sounded like it was just medical district, but when you think about it, all the services and people on the entire peninsula are going to be restricted down to just a few ways out on high ground. One of them's Haygood, but there are a couple of others, I'm sure. And I think that probably will not be in any Corps of Engineer budget. That'll probably be a city budget item, which is going to be on top of building the wall itself. I suggest that we make that a priority, as well as the infrastructure. What services like access roads need to be planned for now, because we don't need them if the seawall is not closed. But in those 3 and 4 and 5 days when the seawall is closed, this city could grind to a halt if there's no way in and out on ground. So just, I think Dale and maybe Alan maybe can speak to that at the next meeting or whenever it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Susan, and then Bob. And Dale, I saw your hand going up. Maybe it makes sense to have those clarifications, post all the questions if you're comfortable with that.
Good. I'm just writing them down.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Did you want me to go, or? Yeah. What I was going to say is that's a great suggestion from Bob. The initial copy that went out was perceived by some people in the city as sort of negative toward the project because it contained information about the questions that you raise. So we softened this and tried to narrow it to be specifically and only informational about what we know. I agree that we should be educating the public in a circumspect way. And I'm thinking that if this copy is a base from which to begin, perhaps we do a follow-up which contains critical questions, the likes of which you are suggesting. And we could do that quickly. But we would have to all agree on what goes into it. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's agree, which I think is the.
I wanted to just stress again, and I know I put it in my my communication somewhere. This copy that's coming is from the committee. It is not from the city. And I think it's really important that we strengthen our identity as a committee with whatever questions we have or disagreements with the city or however that works. We are separate and independent from the city. And I think we need to really identify ourselves as such with all the communications that go out.
Thank you. Thank you. Bob, go for it. And then Dan, I see your hand up following that. Thank you.
Yeah, Susan, I think you're spot on. And I'm a little concerned about the city's edits that would, and it goes to the question that we asked early on, is this council, is this committee designed merely to endorse preordained direction? Or are we critically thinking about whether this is the best thing for the city? I'm really concerned about edits that from this group that would be designed to muffle any issues that we perceive. That doesn't sound right to me. Thank you.
I think that's a great clarification, Bob. Dan, go for it.
Absolutely. And I echo Bob's sentiments. And I that was exactly what I was going to say, is that, you know, we're an independent committee. We appreciate the input that we're getting from the city. And I think it's great that we have those resources, but we need to be an independent voice. And it's tremendously concerning that the city would provide edits to our work product. I think we're here to provide work product to help guide. I mean, look, and Susan, I'd be willing to meet with you every week. I know everyone else. I mean, I would sit with you every week because I think this is such an important issue. And this is what we call due diligence. And ultimately, when I heard that, to me, I think the city is a fantastic resource. And serving on this committee and then on the subcommittees with funding, we've had the opportunity to have the city's finance group weigh in, obviously having Mark previously and now Dale are fantastic resources, but we need to be an independent body and we need to make our recommendations. And I think Bob put it very well. I mean, about leavening some of the language. I think we just need to draw a consensus amongst our group and make our recommendation and opinions. And I don't like the idea of being steered by anyone from that perspective, other than other committee members that want to share their opinions.
I'd like to invite you to my back porch along with everybody else who'd like to meet in open air anytime. Really, I mean that. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That's well, that's great comments again. Please, everybody, take a look. That's all getting incorporated in a. And Bob, is that your hand up from earlier, or is that a new hand up? Gotcha. Thanks. Okay, good deal. So everybody, please take a look. I think, you know, both Bob and Dan's comments underscore the importance of everybody, you know, providing their thoughts, input into this document. So please, please take a look. Join the communications working group as well if you'd like to. And with that said, we'll be on the lookout for additional comments. Again, I know it went out last night, but additional comments for the document for the upcoming meeting. So moving on to the next point, and Councilmember Seekings, I'll, you know, with the understanding that you have the 1040 hard stop, refer to you as far as leading off any comments that you may have. This subtopic, I've intentionally put this in here for open discussion, and it goes to Bob's point he made earlier, which is to, you know, isolate areas where we can, you know, understand. Again, there's always going to be clarifications, big complicated issue, but where we can come to a consensus or as a quorum as a committee. So, you know, the one here I saw that at a high level point is, and this is also, you know, coming from, you know, and looking at the ordinance as well, is do the U.S. and I've used grammar here, so apologies for that. My college professors would be upset with me, but to correct it, do the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers findings in the feasibility study serve as a potential solution for storm surge protection on the peninsula? So just once again, does the result of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 3x3, you know, the latest EIS, serve as potential solution for storm surge protection on the peninsula? And again, Councilmember Seekings, knowing you have to go in 4 minutes, I'll.
So thanks. I mean, I think and it's my understanding just from listening around the table, the Zoom screen in front of me, that there's some desire, I think at this point, for the sort of group to put their opinion forward, and at least on a non-binding basis, sort of see where they all are. And I think that's a really good idea. I mean, to Bob's point earlier, when he asked sort of what the purpose of this commission/committee is, Councilmember Waring and I were there at the genesis of it. We voted for the creation of it, and it is clearly to be an independent body set aside from the city council that happens, by the way, to have 2 city council members on it. And we're not here to influence, we're here to participate and listen. And I think to the extent when this committee goes to vote on what to recommend back to the city council, or to do an interim sort of poll as to where you all are going forward, Councilmember Waring and I probably should not be voting members of that, but should be listening members of that, because ultimately the vote that we cast is going to be at city council on an up or down ballot, as it were, in December, as to whether to move forward with funding. So I would just say, let me just say this. I've been a fairly silent member of this committee, and I think if you ask people on other committees I'm on, that is very rare for me. But it's been very educational. But I will just say this. I'm not really sure I know what you all are thinking individually, and I really don't know what you're thinking as a group. You've been meeting for a long time. We've been meeting for a long time. I think the time is now to at least put cards on the table and see where everybody is, and what may be needed to move things in a certain direction or not. Councilmember Waring and I are listening. I can just tell you, and I'll let Councilmember weigh in, and I'll call in from my phone, so I've got to run over to the college and meet with President Chu. But there is a lot of interest in the community in this, and I get asked about it every single day. Where we're heading, what's going on, where we stand. And people know that I serve on this committee too. And I think if people ask me where the committee is, I've told them working hard and moving towards getting to a place where they can comply with the mandates of the ordinance that we put out there and the commissioning of this committee. So I've sort of said a lot without saying much, but please don't take my continued general silence over the course of the last few months as disinterest. It's anything but. I do think this committee was designed to advise and consent the city council, which I sit on. I'm 1/13 of the vote on this. This is Councilmember Waring, so you've got 2/13 of the votes. So as you all go and do straw polls and votes, I think we should listen and take those votes to heart. And that's kind of where I am with all this, Mr. Chairman. And I certainly have plenty of thoughts on where we are and where we're headed. Don't take my comments on that either. And I'm happy to answer any questions y'all have, either as a group or individually, but this is y'all's task, and we're here to learn. And I do think it'd be good to hear where y'all are. I'm interested in it, by the way. I'm sure Councilmember Waring is too, but I'm gonna let him speak for himself, which, by the way, he's very capable of doing. So with that, I'm gonna put myself on mute. I'm gonna stay listening till 11, and then I will be off the line, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Seekings, and we're always appreciative of your time. Councilmember Waring.
I know Councilman Seekins and I seem to be parroting one another, but there's been times on this committee when I wished I could have remained silent as much as Councilmember Seekins, because he's a little bit better at that than I. But if you would notice, the times that I did speak up, it was when it came to the city's match and funding, because I do feel a little frustration there as far as the strategy being put together to accomplish a major infrastructure project. But the part about the independence of this committee, I mean, that is paramount. That's why in part, I'm sure Councilmember Seekins also voted for this. And the intelligence that's on this committee from different areas of the Charleston community, I think is just outstanding. So if you do not exert your independence, I think the whole effort would have been a big failure. I mean, to be muted or heard or campaigned in a certain direction one way or the other, my goodness, don't do that, because what you all have to say is going to be vitally important to all of council. Jordy Yarborough has been very quiet on this. I mean, the State Ports Authority is a stakeholder in not only a state, but a region. region of the country. So that vantage point is going to be very important on this committee, and of course what State Ports Authority's position is going to be in, and that's going to be aired through the synergies of this committee. So sometimes I just want to applaud some of the things that you all say as part of the discussion here, because it is that that ebb and flow, and sometimes a tussling, if you will, on an issue where I think the best results will come forward, win, lose, or draw. Because at the end of the day, we need to do something comprehensive for the city. You all now know this subject probably better than any other single group. We got 150,000 people in the city of Charleston, according to the last census. You tell me a group in the city of Charleston that knows it better than you all, because you all have put in the time. So please believe me, what you all have to say is vitally important. And Councilmember Seekings, myself, and our other colleagues on council, we'll have our day once it gets turned over to council. But as I said, I wish I could have held back a little bit more, but there were times I did speak probably a little bit more than I personally wanted to, but because I am interested in what you all have to say, and what the constituencies that y'all represent have to say. So with that, I eagerly await whatever comes off of Susan's back porch or wherever it derives from coming forward to council. So again, thank you for all the time that you all put in.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Waring. And you know, your comments are always very insightful and important, and very much appreciated, given that you've been there before, so to speak. So anyway, just want to say thank you as well on behalf of the committee. So Jordan, I saw you unmute and then mute. Is that
I was putting my virtual hand up. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councilmember Waring. You are correct. I have been fairly silent during this 5-month process. It's been an honor to be a part of the group and to learn about the project more in depth than what everyone else is thinking about as it impacts their area of the city. Very narrowly focused for the port. You know, I haven't spoken up because we really wanted to see what the Corps came out with you know, the draft report. And having seen it, I can tell you very clearly that it is in direct conflict with the 2 objectives that the port submitted as our concerns with the project to the Corps. Just restate that, and I think I shared that with the group in the beginning. You know, most importantly to us is the operations of our terminals on the peninsula, Columbus Street and Union Pier. The wall as proposed in the draft is in direct conflict with that, particularly Columbus Street as an active terminal. Excuse me, I should say maritime terminal. The second objective, of course, is protecting the value of Union Pier for the redevelopment purposes. We feel that the location of the wall is in direct conflict with that objective as well. The entire portion of our property is outside of the wall. We suggested that the wall be located at the high dock, and the Corps did not take that suggestion to heart. So as it stands now, we can't be supportive of this. And I'm happy to respond to any questions on that, but I think that's just want to be super clear about it. That's where we are with the proposal as it stands. I have some concerns and haven't had questions answered about whether or not the Corps can actually move the wall during PED. I have scoured the Corps' website. I don't see any written guidelines for that. Dale, if you've got some insight to that, I would really welcome it. But we have some concerns that moving to PED phase without the wall being moved is a great concern, because I'm not convinced that it can be moved during that stage of the process.
Dale, before you respond real quick, Tori, just a quick follow-up note. Is there a clarification not on the Columbus terminal, on the street terminal, similar to the Union Pier clarification of tying it into the high dock? Anything along those lines specifically that we can
Well, I mean, again, just the location that it's in now, negatively impacts the operation of Columbus Street. I mean, if you have a wall that runs along, Morrison Drive there, just think about trucks ingress and egress to the terminal. Right? So, and then that's a real concern. And then as far as Union Pier goes, again, we are undertaking, a big effort to redevelop there. We know that it's important to the city as much as it is to us. Bringing all that property onto private property lands rather than owned by the state. So, again, it just has a direct negative impact to that objective. And I'm not sure what else I can say about that. That's just the way it is.
No, thank you. That's helpful. Or makes a lot of sense. I think, obviously I think global impact. So it's obviously a very important part of the, not just the economy, but the function of the peninsula and the city. So understood. And Dale, I jumped in front of you there, but I just wanted to make that quick clarification. Do you have any, Joy mentioned a couple notes. Do you have any thoughts there or comments?
Sure. Let me take very quickly Dennis's comments. Is this a 10-year project or a 20-year project? That depends on if it moves forward and how it moves forward. If there's a complex PED phase or some hiccups come up during PED phase, some technical issues like, whoops, we didn't anticipate this, it could go longer. It could go shorter. And again, I mentioned it last night, but the core rebuilt and improved the northern structure in 5 years, 133 miles. That was an all hands on deck thing. If you get a storm in Charleston and they decide to build it, they'll build it quickly, and they will cut a lot of corners, not for safety, but it'll get done. The military can do that, and that'll happen, provided there's sufficient contractors to do the work, right? So again, 10 years is the core estimate. I think this is in an on-storm condition. I think you're looking at 10 to 12 to 14. I don't think it's a 20-year process. Certainly not with the federal funding that's becoming available for infrastructure going around. And you get a storm, the whole scenario is out the window. It'll occur faster, because that's one. Dennis asked a question about federal grants. Federal grants cannot be used to meet the city's cost share. That's double dipping from an accounting purpose, right? The Fed's going to pay 65% and the Fed's going to pay the city's 35%. That cannot be done. That said, if the city has a infrastructure project that is going to spend, say, $10 million on drainage, and it gets federal funds to do that, then that money is fungible and can be then shifted over to the budget that would cover the city's cost for its cost share for the surge structure. So I hope you understand that money's fungible, but no, you can't use the federal grant for the city's cost share. Okay? But you can reprogram money that federal grants would use that would free up the city money. The ingress and egress discussion about when the structure would be closed, what does that mean for how the city operates? Again, there's likely to be an evacuation order, and we know from other places that some people don't evacuate. You are going to have ingress and egress from the major roads, so 526 and all that. So that is still an egress or an ingress route. There are other feeder roads are going to be. That's part of a traffic study that's going to be need to be done. Part of this, what is the redundancy of roads in and out of the city? So again, not an answer there, but it's a legitimate question, and that's a question that would be in PED and likely during construction by the city. What kind of redundancy does it need for those roads? Because the West Ashley Bridge will be open, but who knows what's happening on the other side at the landing in West Ashley. But the Ravenel Bridge and 526, they're high. As to George's comments, we discussed this, last week. We're going to have another call pretty soon. As far as I understand it, the line can be moved and will be moved, because during PED, they will find things like, oops, we didn't know this, we now have to consider moving it. So I begin with the starting point that it can be moved. The question of where it moves that's something you explore in PED. I do think there is an issue of where it goes. If you move the structure, as I understand it, in the water, so along the alignment of the high dock, and as I understand it as a layman, that means where the vessels touch when they're trying to unload or load. You're in the water, the resource agencies from the state will go nuts. Sorry, I don't want to say it that way. That they will have deep concerns about the environmental impact of that. And as you know, the constructability of the structure over water, in water, is 3 times that as on land. So then the costs go up substantially. And if you look at the sheer size of the Austin Port facility at Columbus Terminal, I mean, you know, that would be a lot of water that would be touched. And so costs would be driven up substantially. And thus the BCR would go down substantially. And thus the federal interest would likely decrease substantially. And again, the environmental community may just, the environmental resource agencies may just say no. So the question is can you move it somewhere near the high dock but on land? And if that is not acceptable to the port, then there is a challenge there. And I think we just need to realize what that means for the rest of the peninsula, that you can't move forward. So again, we teed this discussion up in the discovery analysis. I was part of that. We met with the port for 5 or 6 or 7 hours last November discussing how do we do this? You know, how do we do this? And I think there are options there, and I think they're possible in PED. And I will just say this, I know someone very senior in Washington, former district commander in Charleston, former district commander in New Orleans, who I would call and ask him about what can be done in PED. And I don't want to, I will inform the Army Corps district here that I am doing that, just so I can have my own level of confidence. This gentleman in Washington has done CSRMs and built projects, so he will have an understanding of what's possible. And he knows Charleston. I just leave it at that. I don't know if that's sufficient to the answers there. But again, I don't dismiss personally the need for the port to be protected. I think that's essential, you know, and I believe we need to make sure that the port is able to operate in normal conditions. I don't quite understand the question about the structures environment under normal conditions of truck traffic, because there's a road, the road will be there will be a gate, and the gate will be open unless you have a storm coming, and then it will close at a certain point. And there at that point, you would have an operations manual say 8 hours prior to the likely landfall or 16 hours prior to the likely landfall, the city would go through a process of starting to close the structure. And that would be done with, at that point, if the structure is there, it would be done with the port. Again, and the port can help devise that operation manual so that its operations can continue until the moment of safety passes, until the moment needs, when that door needs to close. So that's something you work on in PED and construction when you see exactly where it goes. But that can be done. I just don't understand the issue there.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond, and Dale, I appreciate that. And I want to be clear, you know, we appreciate working closely with this group and the city on this. We're not opposed to a solution to the storm surge problem. We're just opposed to what's presented here. And again, just need some clarity from the Corps and comfort level at what can be done during PED, because I think you're right, Dale, it can be moved, but how far can it be moved? I mean, is it just that it can be moved a certain, you know, within a certain area in which they defined? Is it, and then if there are other environmental impacts, how does that play into it? So there's just, you know, as I've stated, we submitted these comments. We asked for it to be located on the outside of the property near the high dock. Again, that's a little fluid of exactly where that is, but you know, that wasn't accepted or presented in the draft report, and so that's really why we are where we are right now.
Yeah, understood. And I want to work with you. I'm just to explain to you. But again, I think we can get an answer very clearly on PED. I don't have a definitive answer, but the structure can be moved in PED. The alignment can be moved in PED. How far, I'm going to ask for you.
Well, and maybe that's for your list of questions. From our perspective is a clarification on exactly, what is required in PED for that. Is it just value engineering that they can do, or, how far can they go with moving it to where we've requested it be?
This is let me jump in real quick. What I would suggest here, if Jordy, you'd be comfortable with this. I mean, you're obviously the stakeholder here, is similar to what we're doing, or what could be done on the Rosemont front, is that we craft specific language for a recommendation that the alignment, we'll have to figure out exactly how to word it, but the point is that the alignment, I don't know if we'd say be modified or something along those lines to accommodate to accommodate whatever the ongoing operations.
That's already there. That's in the non-federal sponsor comments. That's in the redraft report now. The question is, it's not defined where. And Jordy's right. Like, what does this mean? I get it.
Is there a specific? I think I know the answer to this. Is there a specific alignment that in the operations concept that would make sense?
I mean, as I've said, we suggested the high dock. That's the solution that we suggested.
Understood. With the interest of time, what I would suggest that we'll table this, have a discussion similar to the Rosemont discussion. Obviously, both are crucially important. We incorporate as concerns, right? I mean, major concerns. Thank y'all for that. And we're getting up on time here. So I'll open it up. If everybody's comfortable, just a nod ahead, a thumbs up, whatever. Would y'all be comfortable going another 10 minutes to put a bow on this discussion? Great. Thank y'all very much. Again, I really appreciate y'all's time. So, Jordan, if you're comfortable with it, I think we have a more formal discussion around it, or around the alignment issue. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Thank you. Any other?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think some of that conversation that took place, because he certainly speaks very well for himself, but I think that's what Mr. Maybank was talking about. It was beneficial for all of us to hear that. So anyway, I thought that's the synergies that we all need to hear the issues, the ebb and flow back and forth for Rosemount as well as for the State Forest Authority. But anyway.
I couldn't agree more, Councilmember Waring, and that's why I think we should have an agenda item built around it. To exactly to your point, it's a really important issue that I hate to be discussing in the last 5 minutes of a meeting when it's something that I think similar to Rosemont, it's vitally important and has been brought up as a serious issue, whatever, for the entirety of the committee's existence. Is there any other kind of points for discussion? Susan, please go ahead.
I just wanted to, I put it in the chat. I wanted to set a deadline for this committee to send me comments on the copy so that we can indeed move this forward. It's been sort of hanging around for a while and it got stuck in the city office and stuff, but let's say Monday at the latest. And in the meantime, Dale and I will talk about the visuals, I hope. I do have an interim visual that I can send, but we had a conversation about that. So I'd like to finalize that. And Doug is not here, so I'll get in touch with him once we have final. But I'd like to get your comments, everybody's comments by say Monday at noon.
Yeah, and And that makes sense. You know, my response to you was, hey, when's the next communications working group meeting to use as a deadline? Has that been scheduled? I just want to make sure that that all aligns.
Yet, but I've sort of been working by myself on this and emailing with Doug and Jordy. If anybody else would like to join us, you're more than welcome. I can use all the help I can get and will in the future, I think. But in the meantime, I'm happy to work this way. It's easiest, I guess, for Doug because he's really busy. So that's where we are. I'm just saying Monday at noon and then we can move it. I hope.
Great. Well, everybody, please get your comments in on that Monday at noon. That sounds great. I appreciate that, Susan. Thank you for establishing that deadline. It makes a lot of sense. We've had a lot of good conversation today. I mean, it almost seems, I think Bob's point's a good one. There's a lot to consider now. You know, what I'd propose is opening, maybe we put specifically on the next agenda this straw vote concept. I think it's a good one, and it'll help establish consensus on everything, and we'll discuss it. You know, when it is, because obviously we have the Rosemont resiliency concept, which, you know, will go into an official recommendation as well as the port wall location. And then, you know, in keeping with Susan's and our discussion earlier today, actually, you know what? Let me open it up. Does anybody have any kind of final comments or thoughts? I'd like to end the meeting with the vote that was suggested regarding the off week meeting, given that we still have a quorum here. But prior to that, given that we have about 7 minutes left, Laura, please go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to put a topic on that may merit some additional discussion as an agenda item, just like you have proposed, Mr. Chairman, for the Rosemont work and community resilience for the port's concerns regarding alignment, and that is with regard to the meaningful incorporation of nature-based solutions, and you know, including some of the ideas that are in the Sherwood report. And Dale, I hear your points, and we're certainly well aware that the ideas that the Sherwood team presented are aspirational and weren't backed up by a lot of geo modeling and technical investigation. That's not what they were commissioned to do. And I would like to better understand how those ideas or others can be considered. And I mean, again, Dale, I'm looking at you on the Zoom because I hear your points about sediment and weight loads, and I understand that there are considerations, but I don't feel confident that those things have been run to ground. And I very much want to support this project. I mean, the question that you posed, Mr. Chairman, was, does the feasibility study serve as a potential solution for storm surge protection? And the answer to that question is yes, it does serve as a potential solution. The question is it the one we want? And that's a circular question that we've been going around and around about for 5 months, and we're getting smarter as we go around. So that's the good news. I'm as terrified of our vulnerability as anyone else on this call, but I still have a lot of concerns and think that there are things that we need to understand better before we can craft recommendations to council.
Couldn't agree more, Laura. Thank you. And so we'll get that incorporated as a third point. Specific topic for discussion is nature-based solutions. Susan and Bob, I see your hand up. Please, Susan, and then Bob.
Thank you. I want to second what Laura said and then add to her list of things. I'm not an environmentally trained person, and I would love to get Laura's response to the EIS that was done in the report, because I am reading it. I'm going to get a hard copy so I don't get blind. Printed one for me, so that's good for everybody to know. I really would like to know what the league's response, your response is to what the Army Corps has offered in the EIS and what they say they're going to offer in the EIS in this connection.
Yeah, I'm just jumping in just to
Yeah.
respond to that. We're absolutely happy to share that. We're working on it right now.
Terrific. I think we need
Laura,
that.
Sorry, Susan, go for it. No,
I
please.
just wanted to say it would be good to have a time slot for that. There's a committee working on it, and we haven't had an opportunity to discuss it really. So that's it.
I'll put in a working group plug here. That could be a good thing to, we can do it officially in the meeting, and also I'm sure it'd be a great subject for an EIS committee meeting as well. In addition to that, so anyway, thank you, Laura, for both your professional service there as well as your volunteer work on this committee. I see Bob and then Dan, and then after Bob and Dan done, we're going to take a vote on this this upcoming time slot. I believe we still have a quorum. So Bob, go for it.
I mean, I think all of us could agree that the incorporation of additional green versus gray solutions would be a positive, enhancement to the proposal. I'm going to go counter a little bit in terms of all these proposals need to be viable. I mean, that's been our question from the start. Is this project in its entirety viable from a political, financial, logistical, engineering standpoint? Same with these proposals. I mean, I attended the early Clemson brainstorming. Those things were very seductive, but unconstrained by reality and dollars and cents. So I think at some point there's a litmus test in terms of, for example, Sherwood, when asked, geez, reducing the lanes to 2 on Lockwood, does that anticipate the addition of 800 cars when Jasper is fully populated? And it was like, no, that's a traffic study. Well, that's sort of significant before you do these proposals that, are seductive, but maybe not viable. So I think that needs to continue to be the litmus test for all of us in reviewing proposals. The Army Corps put in a line, sort of hard pressed to, defend this full-throated, the Army Corps, but they did a very sophisticated process. And if their determination is geologically or whatever, geometrically, the Sherwood proposal is not viable, geez, then we need a counter argument or we pass it by. Good mute.
Thank you, Bob. No, that's a good point. Something that we can, I think, dig into a lot further at this this upcoming meeting. Dan, please go for it.
Yep, real quickly. So, listening to the input about the Sherwood proposal, and I've had an opportunity to spend some time with Tom Jost, and if any of you get an opportunity, spend time with him. They've got some amazing solutions to what can happen here at the city of Charleston. But I got to say, irrespective of feasibility, we're the greatest city in the greatest region. All of the projects that we propose should be aspirational. I mean, ultimately, that's been the tenet of everything that we do in the city of Charleston and in this region. Having developed in this region, I know there's tremendous scrutiny on the things that we bring out of the ground. So, the problem I'm having is, we're looking at this in a very rigid manner. And look, the Army Corps of Engineers is doing a great job. I've worked with them individually, with them as a member of a group developing in this region. But their task was build a perimeter wall around the city and make it as least expensive as possible. That was it. If that's going to be the driving force of how we move this project forward, it's going to be very hard to support this. I mean, we should be looking at things aspirationally. If this wall is going to cost whatever the number is or whatever we need to do, look, we have a serious problem with managing water in the city of Charleston, in the Low Country, along the entire eastern seaboard. If there'd be a way that we could get our water to the West Coast, that would be great. But ultimately, what we're pursuing right now seems to me, number one, very rushed. We're trying to do our due diligence. And I just have a hard time supporting moving forward. And the answers that we're getting are, don't worry, it'll be handled in PED, which is a little bit contradictory to the answers we were getting 3 or 4 months ago, which was once the wall alignment is set, once the Corps has its plan in place, this is the way they're going to move forward. Now, then there's the argument about betterments and mitigation. Okay, but I just feel as though I can't support something with that much uncertainty. And if we're going to add one more agenda item as we move forward, it's got to be about finance. I mean, our funding committee has met and we've had the city present to us, and and now hearing about this, where the state of South Carolina's Port Authority sits, which is, by the way, everyone should be reminded, is a state agency, right? So to get state support, we're going to need to have alignment there. And I see that the city doesn't have the money and they're going to be looking to different sources. Well, I think the city owes it to us to present where this funding's coming from and not just say, don't worry about it. Once we get to PED, we're going to find it. Well, I mean, have they reached out to the state? Have they reached out to the county? Where is this money coming from? In other words, the way we do things in the private industry is we create a pro forma and we've been told what we think the costs are. Well, where is the money coming from? Where's our sources and uses? And, that's why I wanted to be a part of the funding committee, because I wanted to see what exactly is going to be produced to show us or give us confidence that this could be funded. So, I know you're working towards a straw poll. That's my opinion. And my opinion is, under the current due diligence, a lot more needs to be done. And I feel I don't want to be rushed to have to make a decision. Look, we need to come up with a solution. There's no doubt, but this rush to try and get to a decision so that we can make a recommendation. If we had to make a recommendation today, I would strongly say, let's abandon this and move forward and find the real solution for the city of Charleston and for the region. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's fair, Dan. I mean, so just a couple of quick notes there, knowing that we're about 5 minutes over, is that my understanding, and Dale and Kalen weigh in here, city's working on sources and uses of whatever, working on the revenues to offset the cost right now. And I think, like was mentioned, there's going to be some shortfall. So the question is just, what's the amount of that shortfall? I think the current cash outlay right now is about $240 million. As you've mentioned several times in the past, those costs continue to go up as everybody's seeing. But with that said, that's the most recent number that we have in writing that we can lean back on. And so, again, with that in mind, Dale, Kalen, do y'all have any kind of updates from the city on that sources and uses front? Any thoughts there?
No, just as I said at the beginning, I know there were discussions before I started on this. I didn't see any concrete evidence that there was a strategy developed. So Amy and I met last week, end of my first week, and we met again with the mayor, and we're trying to come up with a strategy. Again, I don't know which sources of existing funding can be used for this, which new sources of potential funding. There are a number of ideas where I'm trying to get a sense of what each of those may yield so we can get a potential idea of what the shortfall would be, just the city perspective. And then from there, see how much we may need from the region and the state. Again, and that's something that is underway. And I hope to have, I've asked Amy if I could have that within 10 days, and that was a couple of days ago. So she's in the middle of a grind with the budget, as you know. And so, whatever, that's my intent, is to start that discussion and get it there. And as soon as there's a clear strategy to ponder, I think the meeting with the funding subcommittee is essential. So, and again, if you watched last night, I think it's important to say that the drainage fund and the stormwater fees that are that flow now into particular pots of particular budget line items, those will not be touched for this. So this would have to be additional to those. Just want to clarify that the drainage stormwater is not a piggy bank for this. So.
Real, thank you. Dale. What I would suggest is, actually, I'm gonna say a couple things. One is, I think as soon as we can, we get that with the funding working group, and then as soon as she's done, the immediate following meeting, we put Amy on the, or Mrs. Wharton on the agenda. I'm gonna go ahead right now, just given timeliness. We'll get to everybody's questions. I'm going to go ahead and since we still have a quorum, and just request a show of hands for folks that would like to utilize the 29th at 9:30, that's circled time, for an additional full committee meeting. So show of hands for. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we have the we have the quorum there. So Kayla, I know that there's timing aspect to that. So if you could go ahead and incorporate that. Thank y'all. And then I frankly lost track of the order of questions. So just as the way it's shown on my screen is Susan, then Herbert, and any other hands. So Susan, please go for it. Thank you.
I wanted to just sort of echo what Dan was saying about feeling rushed. I know we spent a lot of time having meetings for 5 months, but this meeting is a really good example of substantive discussion, and it's one of the only ones that we've really had. And maybe it's we have a new document to deal with or whatever, but I'm wondering if one of my concerns has been that we are operating according to the timeline that the Army Corps has set. And my concern has been that we should have our own timeline. And I haven't thought that through entirely, but I agree with Dan that all of this is really important, and we need to be clear and sure and sort of coordinated about what we're going to recommend if we're going to recommend. So maybe we can push out the timeline enough to accommodate that concept. And that's why I thought we should certainly have additional meetings, and I'm glad we'll meet again next week. So that's my suggestion.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah. Maybe this is a follow-up question. I mean, is there, whatever, Dale, is there flexibility in that timing? I know we have so the constraints I see on our calendar or critical path items, I guess you'd call it, is 11/9, final 3x3. This is what's on the communications working group calendar. I have, well, really 10/26. This is for everybody's individuals. Corps stops taking comments, prepares final report. 10/26, also tentative second, committee update to council. We had change of wording on that. 11/9, final 3x3 committee recommendations to council. And then December 21, city council vote on financial capability and plan approval. So those are the critical path dates. Dale, is there flexibility in those, or what's?
So the Corps of Engineers has authorization to complete to do this study, and it terminates at some point in time. My sense is it's going to terminate sometime next year. There is as I understand it, there is a need. The review process, 3x3x3, it's 3 levels of review that occurs after the report gets sent up. That takes its own time, and for the Corps to get the signed chief's report which then tee up funding for next phase, which then has to be part of the budget discussions in Washington, which will be for fiscal 2023. Those will occur next summer. So the Corps of Engineers wants to have this out of the Charleston district to meet that possible deadline by December. Okay, and again, at some point, the Corps authority here will expire to continue this study. So you have those two things. If you don't meet that deadline, and if the city asks for more time, it's certainly possible. It would mean that funding for anything would probably not be available until fiscal 2025. So the whole schedule gets pushed because Congress only does WRDA bills every 2 years at best. Sometimes they've done them only 4 years. So again, Congress does its own thing, but they do have a normal every 2 year cycle for WRDA. So that's what the deadline is pushing here. Core processes so that they can move forward, again, just with PED and any construction authorization.
Thanks, Dale. Appreciate that color on timing. Herbert, I believe you were the, I believe you had the question. Please go for it.
I just wanted to make sure that I got it right. I'm going to send out the questions that I had sent in before, and I'll send it out to the committee, the whole committee. That way everybody will be up to speed as to that line of questioning. And you guys will have it to like look at as far as making sure that you're answering the question for Rosemount.
Dale, I saw you saying that you had questions.
Yeah, we have them, and I don't need them, but the other committee members may want them. It's fine.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, Herbert, feel free to do that. If it's for whatever reason, I can, if anybody doesn't have the questions, please reach out to me, reach out to Herbert. Short answer is yes. I think that's fair, but I think I guess all those questions are going to the core, is what I heard Dale say earlier, to be addressed at the 9/28 meeting. Is that correct, Dale?
Pardon me, I'm sorry. Yes, the questions that we asked you to submit, I'm sorry, I was looking at something else there. What's your question? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Just quick clarification. You have Herbert's questions. They're going to the core. Core is addressing them 9/28. Is that
On to the core? I've discussed them with the core already. I can share those verbally with Herbert on the phone, but we're going to ask the core to respond to them directly at the public meeting next week. And then Kate and I will take the notes on that and share them with the committee. And if that requires further discussion at a successor meeting to this, then we'll do that.
Thank you. Bob, I see your hand up, and we're about 30 minutes over, so we'll go ahead and wrap with Bob's question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. So this meeting was informative. Dan's comments and Jordy's comments, very illuminating. It also demonstrates that, we may be a ways away from alignment. As a council, as pre-work for the next meeting, I'd suggest that each individual council person just do a little blurb in terms of where their heads are at. And if that meets, Robert's Rules of Order in terms of pre-work, and that would constitute a form of straw poll, lacking the synthesis of discussion debate, but maybe we can do that at the next meeting. But, there are some real strong feelings lurking here that we're just exposing now. Or maybe that's probably a wrong characterization, but we got to get this shit out on the table. Edit the shit term out in the minutes, if you would, Kaden. But, this is substantive stuff that we, need to be getting on with.
Duly noted, Bob. And we will reflect the minutes to, correct the minutes to reflect your change there. Yeah, no, I think everybody agrees. And anyway, so that all sounds good. I saw a couple notes in the comments section, by the way, on timing conflicts. Galen, maybe we'll send out, or if you could send out just a handful of times that work, knowing that we have to be with the clerk for a committee meeting by tomorrow afternoon. Maybe it's worth incorporating in that poll. And I don't know if the technology allows for this, but point being that if we could incorporate, just a comment section there with regards to that blurb, the comment that Bob put forward. Is that doable, Caitlin?
Yes, I need clarification on what you just last said with the blurb, but sorry, I'm trying to type the notes and also understand what you're saying. Yes, I can send a doodle poll out. That's fine. I just will need like less than 24 hour response time from folks. I would just do the same thing where I suggest a morning and an afternoon. I'm not going to suggest it's a council week next week. So Monday, Tuesdays are out if we want to have a hope of our council members joining. So I'll probably send out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, morning, afternoon slots like they did for last week. And I think you were saying about sending out folks' thoughts on outstanding stipulations to bring up.
No, forget about it. If I'll put this out in an
I
email.
can contact you later. That's fine. I'll get the.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll just request that they be sent directly to me.
And perhaps this correlates again to the reminder for folks, any outstanding core questions. I can try to, through my notes, put together what was discussed today, but it may be better, if Jordy or Dan, or we have Herbert's, if you want to formulate your questions more clearly that we can present to get answers to in writing from the core, that would be helpful from my end.
Great. Thank you all very much. Again, reminder, please get your comments in to Susan's document. Please get core questions in, and then be on the lookout for calendar times. But again, very much appreciate everybody's time, this committee, and that's how I'll go ahead and wrap us up. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.